Welcome back to Topless Galore. Today we'll be looking at 10 sports teams that unfortunately lost almost all their members in terrible plane crashes. These events are fairly rare considering the amount of sports teams that exist around the world and how much they have to travel nowadays with all the world getting smaller and having more interactions with faraway places. I find these events fascinating because of the massive effect these types of losses has on a single group. All plane crashes have massive loss of life and affect a great number of people, but not to a specific small group. It's always more spread out than this. If you happen to enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe down below. Also make sure to turn on those post notifications so you know when I post more videos. Let's get started. One of the most recent and infamous events occurred in 2016 when the chapecoense soccer team from Brazil was on board the Lima Flight 2933 en route from Bolivia to Colombia to play the 2016 Copa Sudamericana finals. There were a total of 77 people on board, although 81 people were scheduled to travel, including Matteo Saroli, who was the son of Coach Gao Jr., who died in the crash. He didn't make it because he had forgotten his passport. Only 6 people survived the crash, including 3 players from the club. The cause of the accident was lack of fuel, and when they were trying to land, they were forced to wait 7 minutes due to another plane having fuel leak issues, who had already requested priority landing. And this led to the crash. Chapecoense was set to play Atlético Nacional, but after this tragedy, Atlético Nacional conceded the final in order for Chapecoense to be awarded the championship. In 1993, the Zambian national football team was traveling to Senegal in order to play that country in a 1994 World Cup qualification match. They had a special arranged flight from the Zambian Air Force and were scheduled to make 3 refueling stops on the way. After the first stop, there were engine problems noted, but the flight continued, at which point an engine fire was spotted. The pilot, who was fatigued, went to shut off the failing engine, but accidentally turned off the only working engine during the climb out, causing the plane to crash 500 meters offshore. The Zambian team was very promising and had high hopes to qualify for their first World Cup, but they lost 18 players in this accident. The total death toll was 30 passengers, including 5 crewmen. The Russian professional hockey team named Lokomotiv Yaroslavl was forced to cancel their participation in the 2011 season due to a horrible plane crash where almost the entire team perished on September 7, 2011, except for 1 player and 1 coach who were not on the flight. They were traveling to Minsk in order to play their first game of the season. There was a total of 45 passengers, including the crew, but only the flight engineer survived. The cause of the accident was due to poor training, as the pilot had falsified his credentials, and both crew members were not trained to fly the Yak-42 plane. The plane crashed during the takeoff after overrunning the runway and lifting slightly before crashing into an antenna mast and landing on the bank of the Volga River. One of the players, named Alexander Galimov, was initially found alive, but later died in the hospital due to his injuries, including 80% of his body having severe burns. This was actually the second Russian hockey team to have perished in a plane crash, as the VVS Moscow entire team was wiped out in 1950. Another soccer team that was involved in a plane crash is the Torino soccer team from Italy. On May 4, 1949, the team was on an Italian Airlines flight heading back home from Lisbon, where they had a friendly match against SL Benfica. When the plane, upon approach to land in Turin, Italy, crashed in the back of the embankment of the Basilica of Superga. The entire Torino soccer team was on board the flight, and they all perished with no survivors of any kind. Investigations have not been conclusive, but suggestions are that the plane drifted due to bad weather. And also recently, they think that the altimeter might have malfunctioned, leading the pilot to think that they were at a higher altitude. The death of all these players also meant that almost all of the Italian national football team perished, as it was composed of almost all Torino players. On board Southern Airways Flight 932 was the Marshall University Thundering Herd football team, returning from a loss to the East Carolina Pirates on November 14, 1970. In total, there were 75 occupants on the plane, and they all lost their lives, including 37 players, 8 members of the coaching staff, and 25 boosters from Marshall University. The plane crashed on the final approach to Tri-State Airport, approximately 1 mile west of the runway. There was terrible weather that day, but landing was still possible. The main cause of the crash has been attributed to the descent below minimum descent altitude during difficult conditions. Also, they said that there might have been a system error, leading the pilots to believe that the plane was higher than it actually was. Initially, this accident led Marshall University to discontinue the football program, but with great effort from the students and the fans, they were able to convince the president to reconsider. The entire 1961 U.S. figure skating team, which included 18 members, as well as 16 other people, including family and coaches, all died during the Sabena Flight 548 plane crash on February 15, 1961. The team was on their way to the World Figure Skating Championships in Prague. In total, there were 72 people on board, and they all lost their lives, with one more person on the ground being killed. The plane was trying to land and had already made 2 failed attempts, and during its 3rd time circling the airport, the plane suddenly leveled out and pitched up abruptly, losing speed and spiraling nose down, crashing into the ground less than 2 miles from the airport. It was evident that the pilots were fighting to control the plane, and although the cause is undetermined, it is believed that there was likely a loss of control due to mechanical failure. It is the deadliest plane crash on Belgian soil. On October 6, 1976, 24 members of the Cuban national fencing team was killed when the flight they were on, Cubana de Aviación Flight 455, was taken down by 2 bombs. The plane was flying from Barbados to Jamaica when the group, Coordination of United Revolutionary Organizations, which is a Cuba exile terrorist group, placed 2 time bombs on the plane, and they were set to explode when the plane was over the sea. The fencing team was coming back from competition where they had performed very well, and their country had high hopes for them competing on the international stage. Unfortunately, it never happened. The entire 23-man club Alianza Lima soccer team lost their lives on December 8, 1987, when the Peruvian Navy plane they had chartered crashed into the Pacific Ocean 7 miles from the Callao airport. The cause of the accident was pilot error, as the pilots lacked night flying experience and the co-pilots misread emergency procedures relating to landing gear issues. The only survivor of the accident was the pilot himself, who managed to escape the plane together with footballer Alfredo Tomasini, but after floating together for hours, they became separated and Tomasini drowned. The pilot was saved after spending 11 hours in the water. Alianza was scheduled to play a game against Deportivo Pucallpa, thus they made their way to Lima on this initially uneventful flight, until everything turned into a hellish night. The 1977 basketball team from the University of Evansville had a total of 20 players, and all but one unfortunately lost their lives on December 13, 1977, when Air Indiana Flight 216 crashed at the Evansville Regional Airport in Indiana in the United States. The cause of the crash has been blamed on the pilot not removing the gust locks on the right aileron and the rudder and an overloaded baggage compartment. The basketball team was en route on this chartered plane to face off against Middle Tennessee State basketball team. The plane crash took the lives of 29 people, all a part of the basketball team except for the 3 crew members. The one player that didn't die wasn't on the plane as he was injured, but tragically enough, he lost his life only 2 weeks later along with his brother in a car accident. This team was just cursed, no doubts about it. The vast majority of these tragedies involve soccer teams, and we end with one more. This time it involves the Chilean Antonio Barra soccer team. On February 6, 1965, the team was headed to Uruguay for a match against the Camadeo team from Montevideo. There were a total of 87 passengers on this flight, and they all lost their lives. The plane crashed due to pilot error as it barreled straight into the side of La Corona mountain approximately 1,200 feet below its summit. This was due to the fact that the pilot deviated from the standard approved route. It remains as the deadliest crash in Chilean history, and as far as I could find, this team doesn't even exist anymore. Just like that Seinfeld episode, it's really weird that stuff like this doesn't happen more often. But of course, when it does, it makes all the news for obvious reasons.
All these ball clubs flying around all season. Wouldn't you think there'd be a plane crash?
Thanks for watching this video. See you next time.